Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you might be in this fine world. You are listening to the Startup Selling Show, talking sales with Scott Sambucci. That's me. Today's episode is a guest episode, and today's guest is Tom Searcy. Tom is the CEO and founder of Hunt Big Sales. If you're wondering what Tom does, I think I just answered the question. Tom has over 20 years of experience as an expert in sales and sales leadership. He's known for his expertise in what he calls unlocking explosive growth for business owners and helping them change the landscape of how they sell, how they position themselves, and how they set their organizations up for growth. Tom has done keynote speeches, whole day, half day workshops. He's been a regular speaker at the Inc. magazine and Inc. 500 conferences, 500 conferences. He's spoken at Visage International. He's ranked as a top 1% of speakers at Visage. He's also written online columns for Forbes, CBS Money Watch, Inc.com, and he's also been featured in the Wall Street Journal, Financial Times, and numerous other business publications. Like, the guy knows sales, which is why I had him on the show. He's also written multiple books. His latest book is called How to Sell in Place, Closing Deals in the New Normal, which we touched on at the very end of our conversation. In addition to How to Sell in Place, Closing Deals in the New Normal, he's also written 4 other books: Life After the Death of Selling, How to Close a Deal Like Warren Buffett, RFPs Suck, and Whale Hunting. So everything that Tom does and everything that his company Hunt Big Sales does is helping companies that are in that $10 million to $250 million range, help them what he calls double their double. He helps them increase their deal sizes by 2x or more and convert those deals 2 times quickly. So just wrapped up the conversation with Tom and had just a blast of a time. He dropped so many little value bombs, not even little ones, but big value bombs throughout the way. And I'm just scanning through my notes, and I'm just going to give you a highlight of some of the stuff that he talked about, some of the value bombs that you should listen for as we jump into the conversation. The first thing that we talked about with Tom is, how does a company know that they're ready to double their deal sizes and convert deals more quickly? And we talked about 4 key areas that are necessary requirements for a company to grow. One is around their ability to support new deals, the team that they have, the desire to grow, and the belief that the team has that they can hit that growth. And we talked in great detail about those 4 areas. Secondly, we talked about how price is based on problem and urgency. Not a big surprise, but his take on this is, I think, really interesting, and one that I think will help you think about how you can increase your prices to your target customers based on the problems that you're solving. We talked about the importance of what he calls a target filter, and how do you carve away people who you don't want to sell to. So much of our sales work every day is thinking about who is that ideal customer profile, who's our ICP, who's our target customer. Well, it's also important to know who is not your target customer, and it's important to have what he calls a target filter. He talked about the importance of fear versus having a technical advantage when it comes to a buyer's decision. So most buyers will focus more on the fear factor versus the technical capabilities. And it's our job as sellers to have what he calls to be credibly safe enough, And we talked quite a bit about that. He has this phrase called fear busters that you want to listen for. We also talked about the eel in the deal. We talked about how yes later is a no. We talked about having a spy inside of your deals that you're working on, and how to create an ethical, unfair advantage. So much goodness in here. He talked about cutting thin and slicing deep when it comes to sales. And he said going into the small door means you're going to be stuck in the small room. The truth has a sound, he said. So lots of these little nuggets that I want you to listen for, because in the context of the conversation, any one of those topics is probably something we could have spent 20 or 30 minutes on alone. So tons of information, really rapid fire with Tom. I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation. And most importantly, what I want you to listen for, especially if you're still an early stage company, you're thinking well, this guy helps companies that are doing 10 or 20 or $30 million or more to double their deal sizes. A lot of the principles that we're talking about today are absolutely appropriate for early stage and growth stage companies. So even if you're not doing $10 million in sales, even if you're doing $1 million or $2 million, or you're doing a couple $100,000, I think there's a lot of the principles that we talked about today that will help you identify how you can start targeting bigger deals, and as this company promotes, hunt big sales for yourself. Okay. So that's it. Let's head over to my conversation with Tom. Tom, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Doing great. How are you?
Dude, really good. Glad we can make this happen. So, I've already given the folks listening a little bit of an intro of who you are and what you do, but I always like to hear directly from our guests. So you're obviously CEO, founder of Hunt Big Sales. What does that mean? Like, when people ask you, "Hey, Tom, what do you do?" How do you answer that question for folks?
Well, we take them back to the name of the company with Hunt Big Sales, right? So we
No
didn't want to
trick
be
question here, right?
exactly. We didn't want to have like some special Greek name for it that people would have to go back and look it up. But fundamentally, we teach companies that are between say 10 million and 250 million dollars in size how to go actively land much larger sales, kind of a Davy versus Goliath out in the marketplace. So we talk about doubling their double, which means doubling the speed with which they double the size of their company, or
Mm,
to double the size of their average sale. And we do a lot of deal coaching. We help them navigate through the biggest deal of their business's history. And we've had the opportunity to work with startups, and every once in a while we work with Fortune 500 companies, but we really like the Davy Goliath world. So that's on big sales, skills, training, strategy.
great. I love that. And I love the idea of doubling their double. It's like an easy model because that's a question everybody wants to know. It's like, hey, I want to get bigger deal size and I want to convert them faster. How do I do that? So,
Right.
I'd love to dive into a couple of strategies that you coach your clients on. Before we do that, maybe like to hear the reverse of it, which is, let's say you're a 10 million, $20 million company, they're sitting around, like, how do you know that they're even able to double revenue? How do you know either like whether it's from a product or market standpoint, do their customers have the budget to pay for more? How do you analyze that a company's even ready to double their double?
So when we're talking to companies that are looking, typically it's the C-suite, right? It's the C-suite or owner or investor board. We ask the scale question, right? Do you have the operational capacity to grow at that pace? And let's set that a pace. Too often companies say, well, when we have a high quality problem like too much sales, we'll figure it out. No, no, no. What happens? We always ask the question, what happens when this works? All right. Then at that particular point, you're drowning unless you've got the scale to move forward. You have to have the culture as well. You have to have that revved up culture that looks at the increasing of sales and says, I'm excited about that. Right.
Why wouldn't you be
Um,
excited about it?
what's interesting in the manufacturing world, there's a lot of people that like that engineering growing 4% to 7% kind of world because they've got good controls over that. And they don't do it because they're not lazy. These are hardworking people, but they want to control. They really want to have control of that. So we have a lot of folks that we've talked to that we won't work with because they only want to go from they're 4 to 7, and they might want to go to 8 or 9%. We're just not a good fit for them.
Right.
Of course, you need it. Lots of folks say, "Do you have the money?" The money's important, but it's the last of the concerns. If you've got the scale, if you've got the scale piece and capacity to do it, and you've got the culture to do it, the money will follow as long as you're selling the right kinds of deals.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, we work a lot with startups, and you spend so much time getting a company off the ground, and everything is so chaotic for those first few years. And you finally get to a place of like, I'm doing $10 million in revenue, like things are feeling pretty good. It's almost a place where you're like, okay, now maybe I can relax a little. So I could see, like, I could understand the mindset a little bit of wanting to have control and not keep trying to push for that next level of explosive growth. And like you said, it's just like a decision. Some companies aren't a good fit for what you do, and others are. So that does make sense to me now that you've explained it that way.
I had an interesting company that I started and ran underneath a parent company. So when I say I started it, I was underneath a parent company, but I was employee one. First year, we went to $10 million, second year, $40 million, third year, $70 million, fourth year, $200 million. So that falls in the category of rapid growth. And it was rapid growth with human beings, which means you have to scale up your ability to interview and hire and train and develop. I think at the end of the 200 million, I think we wound up with maybe 4,500 people working in this country and 11 others. So, around the world, all the rest of those kinds of things. What we had that backed that up was an enormous avarice desire to grow. It was just fierce. And then inside of that, we had the financial backup to make that all work along the way. Because as you're growing at that pace, you're completely outgrowing your cash flow. I mean, it's just you're burning money in the streets at a level of high profitability. We would have grown ourselves into bankruptcy So, that $10 million, we went from zero to $10 million in the first year. Okay.
That's
Yay
really,
us.
really fast. That's
Yeah.
really fast.
Yeah. Yay us. It only cost me a marriage and maybe a heart attack. But other than that, you got to be willing to give things up, right?
I know you're being sarcastic about that because I can see your face.
Not all of it, but some of it.
Okay.
But anyway, now we're down the rabbit hole. So I got to back up out of that. But, when you're going at that rate, you have to have an executive team that has the same level of avarice, that same desire to grow, and just almost has a chip on their shoulder of, we'll go make that happen. So when you look at that $0 to $10 million, that particular team, I hired them saying, this is a $100 million business inside of 4 years. And so whatever role you come in at, you should expect to be promoted inside of the next 2 years, or you should leave. So, and you set that on fire and you say, we're going to be that. So you hire past what your needs are. You hire for the $100 million company or the $50 million company. Otherwise, every $10 million or $20 million, you got to turn over your executive team. You lose your, inner culture inside your business. It's a terrible thing to do that.
That's interesting. So, like, in thinking about this as almost like a self-assessment, we say, like, number one, if you want to double your double, you have to make sure that you've got the ability to support the double on the back end. Like you said, the second, you mentioned the team. And so if I'm a founder or CEO, and this came up in an interview I did with a woman named Mary Grothy, and she mentioned that sometimes the team that got you to one stage is not going to be the team
She's
that gets you to the
absolutely right.
next. And
Right.
I'm curious about, have you seen situations where founders were just not willing to make the changes that would be necessary?
Almost every time.
Okay. Tell me more about that.
Well, so founders have, for the most part, and again, every commentary that is an absolute is already false. So, but let's just talk about anything greater than 51%
Mm-hmm.
of the founders have a success model that got them safe, alive, growing to whatever size that is. And remember, when you're a founder, job number one is survive, right?
Yeah.
We know what the ratio of companies are that in their first year go broke, or 2 years. So goal number one is survive. Your founder will, in the third year, fourth year, fifth year, be looking every week or month at cash flow. Why? Because that was the oxygen that allowed their businesses to survive. So the founder, at some point, even when the business is successful and growing and doing all those good things, the founder will still be trapped in a mindset that allowed them to survive and to grow to the size that they are. There are very few founders, and let's just say it's some number less than 50%, who see themselves running a company 10, 20 times the size of the one that they started. And they hire to the people that they can run or control, or that are on the survival side, right? They hire those people and then they outgrow them. And they outgrow them for the obvious reason. Everybody was here working really, really hard to get to, the finish line. And they got to the finish line. They're like, oh, man, that was hard, instead of people saying, I'm going to blow through this on my way to someplace else. So founders are, now you get founders who come with a perspective that says that they have no end to their desire to grow. It's fierceness around the quality of their product and their service. It's not just a desire to get rich and fat and see some, do that. They're fiercely committed to what it is that they produce, and they get excited every day about the next company or next group that they're going to be working with. And they're saying to themselves, well, wait a minute, we can do more of that. We can be more successful than that. And so, they just think about each of those days getting up, getting, the next biggest opportunity. And those are the people that look around at one point and they say, oh my God, we're $60 million. We're $70 million.
Yeah.
4 years ago, we could barely make payroll, and now we're doing really, really, really great. So,
Okay,
I get fiercely attracted to, and fierce is my word of the day, I guess, to founders of companies that have a belief that they can change something important in the marketplace.
Yeah, I think any company, any founder, I mean, we work a lot with tech startups, and you don't. I mean, as much as you might have that big grand vision of building the billion-dollar company, you're really not doing it because you want to have a billion-dollar company. You're doing it because you want to make an impact.
That's exactly
You want
right.
to solve a problem. You want to help a market. You want to help certain customers. The $1 billion is just really how we manifest whether or not there was on the path to making that impact. So sort of treating this like a checklist. The third piece, so number one is like ability to support and scale. Second is having the right team. And the third is desire that you want to keep going and growing for the right reasons, not just because, the next checkpoint is to go from 10 to 30 or 30 to 50.
You bring up an interesting point about that idea that comes down to the idea of vision. And that is that you have to hire past what you can see. Right.
Mm,
So you have to see a business that is bigger than that. And then you have to transfer that vision to the person that you're hiring, because you will hire above what you can spend. Right. So they have to come in because they see themselves a part of something that is beyond the horizon. And then at that point, there'll be a greater amount of income for them and recognition for them and opportunities for them and et cetera. So a good founder, all right, is this energy source, right, of a vision that says, I can't start off at the rate that you should command in the marketplace because of your background, your experience, your resume, whatever. But I can promise you that when we reach this point, you'll make more money than you ever would have made back here. Now,
mm.
the idea there, when we were talking about it's not about money, that's fair because a person is taking a discount for a promise for an amazing future. So you hire past where you are or you think you are to somebody who can embrace that vision of what we're going to be.
Yeah. Well, I think it's also important to separate the founder wanting to grow just because they want to have a $50 million company instead of a $10 million company, just to tell their friends, I have a $50 million company. That's not necessarily the right reasons. But to your point about hiring past where you are and hiring to where you want to go, that person might be motivated by money. It could be a head of sales. It could be a marketing person, a product person that, like you said, they're like, wow, okay, I'm going to take a little less now because I know in 5 years when we get to be a $50 million company, then I'm going to be enjoying the fruits of that labor. Plus, maybe position myself to then start my own company. I'll be
That's
trained.
right.
So I think there's a lot of intrinsic value in addition to the monetary value that
That's right.
is scored. Okay, so that's really helpful just as like a backdrop. And so assuming we've got this sort of core, you check the three boxes. Are there any other kind of key things that you see are important to know whether or not a company's ready to double their double before we talk about that process that you follow?
Yeah, I think there is a piece that is a conversational cultural idea, which is it's very hard. And this is something that we've talked about for a long time. You can't hire someone to sell every day a deal bigger than the biggest deal they've ever sold. So if your own background is as the founder, that the biggest opportunity that you've had as a company of this size, let's just say it's a local or regional company, and your first contract's going to be $100,000. All right. Um, if that's the biggest deal you've ever gotten, and now I want you to go ahead and sell those going forward, that's going to be very challenging. But if you've a person who is used to doing $500,000 deals, $1 million deals, and et cetera, you're going to go out to the marketplace and be successful and conversational and comfortable and confident
Sure.
selling inside of that range. And the reason I say that is that it goes back to the organization. You called it the machine or the engine. You called it the engine, I think was the word you
Yeah.
used. I really like that word a lot because there's so many pieces to making a forward movement inside of an engine, right? And one of those pieces is, do we believe we can do it? And there has to be people on the team who've actually done it
Yeah.
so to have the confidence to go do it. So hopefully that adds to kind of the nature of the conversation, the question that you asked.
Yeah, absolutely. So support, being able to support the growth, having the right team, having the desire, and then also having the belief that
Yeah.
the team can get to there. Okay. So let's say somebody checks those boxes and they call you guys in and they say, look, we want to double or double. We'll go back to the original question I wanted to ask, which is, so let's use that $100,000 deal is sort of like their typical deal or their best deal. And that 100K deal takes 12 months on average.
Right. Right.
Not an unusual way to think about a 100K deal. And they say, look, we want to double or double. We want a 200K deal in 6 months. How do you evaluate if they're able to sell up that same product or package for 200K instead of 100K? Is that even possible? How do you evaluate if it's possible to shrink the timelines? Because some industries just have a natural flow of how long it takes. You talked about this in one of your videos recently about this idea about buying tempo. Some industries, right, because of procurement and red tape and bureaucracy, it just takes a while for stuff to get approved. So what do you do to help that team, that founder, look at what they're doing to identify if or how they do start doubling their tickets and their contract values and doubling how quickly they convert those deals? All right, folks, we are off and running in my conversation with Tom Searcy, CEO and founder of Hunt Big Sales. So a lot of the work that Tom does every day is with companies doing 10, 20, $30 million or more, up to $250 million in revenue, and helping them to grow their sales, grow their revenue, grow their contract sizes. A lot of what we do here at Sales Qualia is helping the early stage, growth stage companies get to be $10 million companies. So if you're a seed funded company, if you're doing $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in revenue, and you're on that race to hitting that magic $1 million in annual recurring revenue, or maybe you're at $1 million and now you got to make that big jump from 1 million to 3 million and 3 million up to 10 million. Then if you're in that position right now and you're looking for ways to get more systematic, more repeatability, more predictability, more scalability in your sales process so you can become one of those much bigger companies doing $10 million plus, then chances are we might be able to help you out. So what I'd love for you to do, if you're in that situation where you feel like you need more predictability, you need more repeatability, you need more scalability in your sales process, the easiest thing to do is just shoot me an email. You shoot me an email at Scott, SCOTT, at salesqualia, QUALIA.com. And just type the word private into the subject line. That'll let me know, let my assistant know. Jocelyn, she'll look at that and say, oh, this is a person that wants to have a private conversation with Scott to see if or how we can help them grow. So that's it for now. Make sure you shoot me a note right now. You're also welcome to send me a text. If you're listening to the Startup Selling Show right now on your mobile phone, just shoot me a text at 415-596-0804, 415-596-0804. Same thing, just type the word private or say, hey, Scott, just listening to you on the podcast, want to have a quick chat. Let me know who you are and who your company is. And we'll set something up. Grab a 15, 20-minute call, figure out if or how I can help you out. So, all right, I think that's it for now. Let's head back to my conversation with Tom.
Really, really good question. So let's start. I'm going to break it down into a couple of pieces that I want us to stick to. One is that the size of an account and the size of the price are based upon the size of the problem, not the capacity to purchase based upon the size of the company's revenue or their brand or their logo or whatever. What is the size of the problem? And then the second piece component of that problem is what is the urgency that they need, with which they need to get that problem solved. If I'm a startup company, I need the people I'm selling to have a scale of a problem, and it has to have an urgency of that problem to get resolved. Because once I've proven out that I'm the right solution for them, they'll buy faster than I can sell. All right, because their problem is so important to them. So problem equals price. If they've got a big enough problem, then that will drive it. Second component of this is what we call a target filter, which just simply says it's more important to figure out the companies you're not going to sell to than it is to figure out the companies you're going to sell to. And we go through a lot about that. And if you go to our YouTube channel and just go Hunt Big Sales on YouTube, you'll find a lot of different things where we talk about those ideas. But this idea of the target filter is critical. If you carve away all the things that are maybe opportunities, all right, then you'll have a lot more time and energy to spend on those companies that are your opportunities. Now, people say, well, how would I know? My answer is follow the problem. So let's just say you're a cybersecurity company, and that would be maybe in your world on the tech side of the business, it'd be relevant. So I have to figure out what is the issue of the size of the problem. Well, I might make a decision of touch points with data coming in and data going out based upon subcontractors or customers or whatever, and say, I work with those organizations that have 100 touch points a day of where there's touch points for data to move in and out. And if I get compromised, then at the end point, I've potentially damaged the sphere of my world. And I potentially, on the other side, I'm going to allow cybersecurity is going to break. Now, if I said to you that you have 100,000 people, right? That's 36.5 million touches in a year, all right? And that your goal is to have that completely insulated from cybersecurity on a cybersecurity basis. And I can demonstrate that we can fix that. Now I have a scale of a problem that's worth talking about. If I show up in the door and I say, you know what, I provide cybersecurity services, and we really help out folks that have a lot of that. Their answer is, we've got a good system for that. And you say, well, that's interesting. How many touches do you have on the inside? How many touches on the outside? And I say, and how often do they touch? Well, this is per every 24-hour cycle. We've got this amount. Okay, so you have 36.5 million moments of risk. Changes the issue of the scale, doesn't it? And if I said, as a cybersecurity company, I'm not going to talk to anybody that has less than 5 million risk-based touches in a year. All of a sudden, I can look at the marketplace and say, okay, who should I be? And by the way, all of that, of course, is made up for the sake of this discussion.
Yeah.
But
sure.
Now I've got a scale, and that immediately cuts out all the other people I should talk to. Because if they don't have 5 million touches in a year, there's no sense in me spending time with them. So the target filter
says,
that could
be either because you're...
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Keep going.
So that's A quality, which is the size of that. There's other qualities that will tell you whether or not you have the right potential win. And everything about this is saying, how do I get to a conversion rate? And we look at a conversion rate, anything that is better than 50%. We look for a conversion rate on big sales to be greater than 50%, because we don't really look at the idea that you're going to swing for the fence and hope. My answer is, when we go to pitch on a really good deal, you're going to put all in, and you better have, on an all-in basis, you better have a higher than 50% return rate on that. You've got to close.
So, well, your opportunity cost of time, because of all the preparation, all the meetings, all the preliminary work, it's hardcore to, you're talking about in the case of cybersecurity, right? I mean, you're not going to just walk in there and do like a quick 30-minute demo and go, hey, here's a $200K contract. Like, the demo is the last thing that they care about. You've got to do all the homework. You got to do all the pull through. You have to do all the research. You have to talk to their IT people. And that opportunity cost of your time is so expensive that if you're sitting around at a 10% conversion rate, like, oh, I got a nice big healthy pipeline. I got 10 deals in the pipeline, because only 10% are going to, one of those 10 are going to convert. It's like, wow, you just exhausted. 90% of your time is completely wasted on deals that you just know aren't going to close. And the problem is, you don't even know which of the 9 aren't going to close. You got to work all 10.
Right. You brought up something that I think is really important inside of that as well, is why do they buy? Okay, so most of us think our tech is better than somebody else's tech, and the sexiest tech wins. It's not true. The fact of the matter is people, when it gets right down to the end of the decision, are going to buy based upon fear over advantage.
Tell me more about that.
So as a small company, a startup or a new tech company, we go in and we say, my tech is sexy. And then somebody else got a comparative tech, and they come in and say, my tech is pretty good, but I'm a bigger company. I'm a safer company. I've got more companies that work with me. I've done 100 installations and et cetera. And they say, that other guy's tech may be good, but I'm the safest decision that you can make. Now, the great thing about safety on fear better than advantage is you don't have to be the safest person. You just have to be credibly safe enough. So you say, look, we've run this through the following testing circumstances environment. We've stress tested this all the way out. We have several other companies with whom we've worked that we should work through. We collaborate on your side to make certain that there's no gaps or holes inside of what you guys are doing. It's an integrated approach. Because of that, there isn't a moment in which you don't have a level of safety. Their answer is, okay, you broke all of my, we call them fear breakers or fear busters, but you've broken down all of my fears. Now, you'll notice in what I just said right now, I really didn't say the same thing as the other guy. The other guy said, I'm bigger, so, give me the money. And we said, I'm going to give you transparency as to why I'm safer. And then they said, yeah, that sounds safe enough. I can see how that's going to be controlled. And now I can show how sexy my tech is, why it works, why it achieves better results, why it reports out and clearer and everything's faster, all the other good things. We normally come in and we try to win on sexy tech. And then you get the glorious opportunity to finish second.
Yeah, I saw that in one of your videos, this idea of coming, glorious opportunity of coming in second. It's interesting the way you describe this, incredibly safe enough. And I think that's an important concept to highlight here, because like I always think about, like, I've sold tech as a startup sales VP. And when you have the right customer, like you talked about, if you got the right match, you got the right customer, they're doing 36 million cybersecurity touch points every year. It's like they want to believe. It's like Agent Mulder in the X-Files. And remember that show? He has that big poster.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I want to believe.
Right.
It's like they do want to believe that your tech is going to help them, but they just can't say yes unless you're able to reduce the risk. If you're able to show them, we talk about it as implementation plans, like give them a view of the future.
Yes.
What's going to happen? Good. Like the contract isn't the end goal. It's not the finish line. It's actually the starting line of the relationship.
That's right.
And so if you can give them a view past that line, okay, if you say yes, these are all the things that will happen. It doesn't have to be better than the other guy. It just needs to be, as you said, I love this, credibly safe enough for them to go, okay, now I can believe, not just I want to believe, but I can believe.
Well, okay, so let's springboard off of that, because absolutely true. Here's the thing. In most of these companies, nobody says yes alone. All right. So they always bring in a couple of other people, and maybe it's an IT person, or if we're not talking about tech, it's going to be someone else. But there'll be some subject matter expert on their buying group. 1, 2, 3 of them. All right. Here's the challenge that we have to remember. I've got my biggest person in the room, and he or she is like a fan of ours, wants to do work with us, really believes that we can be great. The other people are maybe, kind of yes, kind of no, or definitely no. The problem most people don't understand is the ability to say no will trump the ability to say yes. Yeah. In the modern decision-making process, no is more important. So the first thing you do is you look for what we call the eel in the deal. Who is that person in the room that is most likely to not want this? And it's not about chemistry, or they like me or they don't like me. It's possible you look like an interruption into their normal work. Oh, here it is. Boss wants us to go do something else. Like I don't have a full-time job. Or they look at it and they say, I've already got another solution that I want to get that budget for so that we can create it ourselves. Or any one of a number of things that are not about the chemistry with you or their ability to like you. A lot of salespeople want to be liked. All right. And I like being liked, but I prefer to be paid. So that joke usually works. I can't believe it didn't work on you on that one. Your answer is it too soon, Scott? Is it too soon?
No, I was just I was processing everything else that you were. I was about 3 seconds behind what you were saying, and by the time I got caught up to where you were going, I missed the moment. But you're right. I mean, I get it. I mean, I know I used to work at Pearson Education selling college textbooks.
Oh, okay.
There was 300 field reps. This is going back 25 years, and you get to the sales meeting and you'd see who the top performers were. And then you'd see the people that were sort of like in the middle of the pack. And some of the people in the middle of the pack were some of the nicest, sweetest, like most friendly people you would ever meet. And when you talk to them about how they sell, they're like, I just like all my clients love me. All my professors that we sell to, we bring them lunch, we do all these things, but it's not translating to work. Because you actually talked about this idea of the difference between a friendly buyer and a fierce advocate at the company that you're selling to. And it's like, I could be friends with lots of people, or I can work with somebody and I don't have to be friends with them to have a fierce advocate. Maybe you can just help people understand the difference between the two.
Right. And that fierce advocate, or the term we oftentimes use, is executive sponsor. The executive sponsor is the person in the organization that has the problem that you solve, the urgency to do it, and the authority to accomplish that. Then we ask for behaviors after that. There's 5 behaviors that we look for, which basically is, can you convene the people? Can you make it a priority for them? Will you give us the background information we need to have? Can you break log jams for me? And will you stay in the loop so that like once a week or whatever, when I call you, you answer my calls, when I send my emails? I mean, nothing worse than being ghosted on a great opportunity, right? So that's your executive sponsor. Friendly buyers are those people that show up on time, they're prepared, and they've got information. They don't like you or dislike you. They just handle you in a professional way, and they're friendly that way. We like spies. We look to cultivate spies. And spies are not, they're not Russian spies per se. They're a spy.
Speaking of cybersecurity.
Right, exactly. Yeah, they're Ukrainian. And no, yeah, everything comes from Ukraine. I never knew they were so technically savvy. Down a rabbit hole again. So here's the thing: a spy is someone who's willing to provide you more information than they would provide another competitor. Okay, so in its own way, it's encouraging. They're providing that because why? Because they think that you're the right answer. Then every time there's an eel in the deal, there's always an eel in the deal. Anytime someone tells you, I think everybody likes this, you're not looking hard enough. There's someone who has a
Mm,
reason that this should not be a priority. Again, people are trying to read the room and find out who doesn't like them. That's not the point. The point is to say someone is pushing back when you're not in the room because they've got something else. My favorite answer is always, well, after we do this, so after we implement the new system, after we get the reorganization done, after we get the closing of the books at the year, yes later is no. So
mm,
your issue is to, anytime somebody says, yeah, we're really looking forward to this, we really want to wait till after the first of the year and we kind of get our reorganization, they just told you no. Do not be confused. You didn't just win on a timeline. All right, you lost. So
mhm.
that's an eel. An eel shows up as a yes later sometimes.
I love that. Yes, later is a no, because you hear that there's every excuse in the world all the time. Whether it was last year, it was like with COVID. Once we get through the COVID thing, and then we're going to come back around to this. Or in Q4, it's like, we definitely want to do it, but we're going to wait until next year's budget. Or then Q1 comes around. It's like, well, first we had these other projects that we promised that we were going to get done that we didn't get done last year because of COVID. And it's just like gets punted and pushed, and then you keep chasing that deal, and you leave it in your pipeline. You think it's going to convert, and now it's like I've seen people with deals in a pipeline for like 3 years.
Yes, 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 yes. And the fact is, what they don't understand is that that's not a sale process. That's a prospecting process. The minute that gets killed off, you put it all the way in the back of prospecting. I'm not saying throw it away. I'm saying don't confuse that with a selling process. The
Yeah.
only time I ever got an excuse or a client sent me this because they've been taught about this whole idea and et cetera, said, Tom, what's your answer to this one? And he sent me a clipping of an article of one of their key prospects that their entire facility had burned to the ground. He goes, I don't know what to do about this one. I said, I'd put it in my long-term prospecting thing and take it out of your sales process because
Yeah.
it's a credible answer when you show the plant had burned to the ground. That's a credible answer. Everything else, I'm suspicious.
That's when you find out who their insurance carrier is to see how quickly you can get that thing built again. Like you got
That's
to
right.
do reconnaissance work.
That's
Um,
right.
so I want to get clarity on something you mentioned about the spy. So we're using the word spy, and it's usually sort of this very secretive kind of like on the down low kind of thing. But it doesn't have to be a negative connotation. It's not like they're like not. It's not like they're getting information and slipping it to you in a clandestine kind of way. It's a way for you as a seller to identify, do I have somebody who's willing to get me info? And a spy is just an easy way to kind of put the character to what that person's doing. Is that right?
It's exactly right. Someone
Okay.
gave me the phrase, I want every ethical, unfair advantage I can get.
I love that. Go unfair advantage. That's really good. Okay, so then let's go back to the main thread here, which is doubling your double. So you're going in there, you talk to customers, and you said that price is based on the problem, or the problem is what equals price, and you have to find urgency. What's preventing companies from doing that already? Like let's say I'm a founder of a company, I'm doing 10 million, I got the ability to support no customers, I've got the right team in place, I got the desire, the team believes that we can get there. Why can't they just go do this on their own already? Like what's missing that you bring in to help guide them to doubling that double?
Well, there's a pretty long list. Let's start off with, you know,
Great,
geez, Scott, you talk about,
we'll make it a 12-hour podcast.
are you kidding? I built a 15-year business based upon my
Yeah, I
ability
know.
to answer
I
that
guess
question.
I could have asked a better version of that question. Maybe try a
No,
better
no, no,
version of
no.
that question.
Let me give, say, just 3 to 4 core issues. Number one is the inability to say no.
And that goes back to the idea of filtering.
Yeah, so they just can't say no. They hunt everything, right? And
Okay.
little, mid-size, and big, it doesn't matter. They just go after everything. So the second thing is that they've confused the size of the company with the size of the problem. All right. So they go for logos instead of going for revenue.
Mm,
Third thing is that they try to sell as a salesperson rather than sell as a team. If you understand that big deals are never bought alone, then that means that big deals should never be sold alone. How do you take fear off the table? You put the peer to peer conversation that says, oh, when we do this, I'm going to be working with him or her. And I understand how they think and I understand what their background is and et cetera. If you have your salespeople trying to close big deals, they don't close as fast and they don't close as often. All right.
yeah.
So those hold companies back. There's a natural tendency to say, well, we've never done that particular kind of solution before. So what they do is they look at their own approach that they're doing right now, the things that they're doing right now, and they're saying, well, we can kind of do that. Well, that's an honest statement. If someone looks at your company and says, this is the kind of culture and company I want to work with, if you say to them, we've got a couple of things that we believe we can knit together or weave together to produce that solution, and we'll work with you on that. It'll take about 45 days to do that. If you've developed enough of the relationship and the fear and all the rest of it to the degree or safety to the degree that that works, then you can try those new things. A lot of times what happens is those companies, instead of moving forward with that approach, they just kind of lock down into this
Mm,
is all we do. That's okay if you're a retail product. But what
mhm.
happens if you're a solution company selling commercially?
Yeah.
Well, then that's different. Then you have to be a solution provider, and that's typically customized.
And so, like using that cybersecurity example that you mentioned before, let's say I have a software platform that's designed to, you know, encase and avoid these 36 million touch points from a cybersecurity attack. What might be like an extension or a way to go a little bit wider in that case? Like if I sell software as a platform, that's what I do. What have you seen as an example to give people a model of what they might do to kind of stretch out of their comfort zone a little?
There's a number of things. We'll use the cybersecurity
Yeah.
piece just because it's a continuation of what we talked about before. Someone says, okay, we got cybersecurity, but we want you to reach past on cybersecurity from our internal touch points. We want to require a certification of our vendors who are going to be bringing into our system new data, new information, new files. And so, in that way, we need you to create a special connection application and et cetera that will certify. And that needs to be certifying on a regular basis, on an active basis, so that nothing comes in, but we're already in their systems to do so. And we'll require them to license inside of the system. And they're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, I'm now going to be in all of your contractors' systems, and there's this many platforms I have to work with, and all of that has to be certified to make that happen. And you want it real time. And the question is, well, can you do that? And the answer is, yeah. I mean, yeah. Yeah, we can do it. It's just we haven't really worked that far in. And the company's looking at you and say, well, if you can do it, and you're the ones we want to work with. We feel comfortable with how you do it. How long, how much?
Yeah.
That's the nature of the conversation. Once that trust has been built, the tendency or the willingness to ask for beyond what you already do and pay for it and participate with you goes way up.
Yeah.
I use that cybersecurity, and there's probably somebody out there in cybersecurity who's sitting there saying, "So, Tom, you don't have a clue what you're talking about." I'd like to admit right now, I don't.
No,
So
I think the model is a good one to think about. And as a startup founder, you're always straddling the difference between, okay, we have our product, we have our product roadmap, and then we have a key customer who wants something that's not on that roadmap. And you do have to make decisions. Sometimes you may say no to that because it is truly bespoke, and you're like, look, this is like a one-time thing. We're not a dev shop that's just going to like
that's
build an
right.
app for this customer. But if that one customer is coming to you, then maybe you say, look, yeah, let's work on this. And then meanwhile, go have your salespeople go talk to 3 or 4 other customers and say, hey, by the way, we're thinking about building this. You think you'd be interested in it? So you can use that one customer to inform the future product roadmap. And now you've developed some more fungibility as opposed to getting locked into what you think you need to be building. So, and that could easily, maybe instead of just 2xing, you could 10x your business.
That's right. I think that I would put in there that as well. So I'd add to what you're saying is just kind of this little note, which is trust has a premium. So once you've accomplished trust, you can charge a premium for what is they've asked for that is custom or bespoke, as you talk about. That idea that trust has a premium is important to recognize because you've invested in creating that trust. You have a right to collect the margin on what you've done.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And so, and are these situations where you're dealing, I'm curious from your perspective, the double your double, do you find that this works better in upselling existing customers, like in this situation that we're describing, or can you double your double with new customers out of the gate,
Uh,
or both?
yes. Yeah. So the new customers out of the gate, it's great because you can land those larger accounts. I am not a nibbler. I don't think you go in through the small door and because you'll get stuck in the small room. Let's come and say, let's get our foot in the door and let's see if we. No, you suck. You can't do that. It's not going to work. You're going to get stuck in the small room. I get kind of violent about that
I could tell a
idea that
little.
we're going to.
I noticed a slight
Oh
change
my!
in intonation there.
It's the weakest excuse from salespeople of let's get our foot in the door. I mean, you're gonna nibble your way like and not be able to get much size out of it. But so if you come in at the right level, you can get that larger piece of business at that new account. What you have to recognize when you're going to grow a current customer, the curiosity is what's the amount of spend. So in your area, are they spending 100% of what it is that they spend with you, or 50%? There's a difference of asking for more of same or more of different. If you're going to sell something that is different, there's a new buyer's table. There may be a new executive sponsor, but there's other people who very much may feel like they should say no. So you have to treat it almost like it's a new sale because you've got a new executive sponsor and a new buying table. And even if you have the same customer executive sponsor, you still probably have a new buyer's table. If that's the case, then it is relatively a friendly new sale.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, because you can leverage the trust from the one executive in the different division. I mean, we've had this, and there's places where foot in the door. Again, if you're an early stage company, you're just trying to get your first 10 customers, your first million in revenue. Yeah, maybe foot in the door, land and expand makes sense. But in your case, you're talking about companies already doing 20, 10, 20, 30 million. So they have reputation, they have proven success, they have customers that should love them already. So there's no reason to go back to what got you there is not necessarily the same strategy that's going to get you the next phase of growth. So be bold and look for those opportunities and leverage the trust that you built. Is that right?
Absolutely. I'm gonna, I kind of put some hooks into the language of things because they're easier to remember. When you're landing your first 10 deals or 20 deals or whatever they are, my answer is to, cut thin and slice deep. Get it as thin as far as what is the market that you're going to go and serve, as thin as you possibly can, and then cut your claim all the way as deep as you possibly can. That's an easier way because the market size may be larger, all right? But you've got to dial that down into a very small area who's got a deep enough problem that you can step in and say, nobody's paying attention to you on that problem, but I can solve that problem. Because I believe, what happens if you get 10 foot in the door deals? All right. Now I got to go get 10 other people to listen to me and believe that they should be my first larger deal. So I go from foot in the door to 2 foot in the door, instead of going from foot in the door to shoulder to hip to all the way inside of that door. And if you go in the small door, you usually get stuck in the small room.
Yeah.
So, hunt thin, cut deep, slice thin,
I like that.
cut thin, slice deep.
Yeah, that's really good. I like that a lot. All right. So look, man, we got a couple minutes left. If somebody's like sitting there and they're listening, they're like, okay, like I'm in on this. Like I get it. Tom's convinced me that, assuming I got the ability to support, I've got the right team, I've got the belief, I got the desire. I want to start doubling my double. And I want to get started like in the next couple of weeks just to get myself positioned. Like what are those first 3 steps that a company founder could start to take on their own to help them get on this path to doubling their double? Besides, of course, calling you.
Step number 1 is to figure out as clearly defined, which companies don't do this very well, as clearly defined and as narrow as possible, what is the problem they solve uniquely. And cybersecurity be easier to, easy to say, hey, listen, you're going to be safe because there's a lot of folks that are out there, they're sending in And none of that ever happens when it hits you. And the people that are buying from you are going so bored they can't believe it because they've heard the same pitch. You've got to get thin
Hmm.
inside it. So the first thing is, what is the problem that you really, really solve that is deep and significant inside of that? Second thing that you need to look at is, who are the companies for whom we can uniquely solve that? So who are all the people we should not be talking to, and we should only be talking to these people? Third
Yeah.
thing is, what is the language of the executive sponsor? How do I put together a conversational approach, a specific approach to the executive sponsors whom I may or may not know because of the industry, or people I've known in the past, or brand new people that I'm going to speak to? You know, the language that I always say that truth has a sound. When someone is listening to you as a potential buyer, they're listening for the truth of your understanding of their real problem. And so you have to be able to say to an executive sponsor, look, just like I did at the very beginning of our session, we solved three problems. For companies between $10 million and $250 million in size, we help them solve one or more of the following three problems: either to double their double, which is double the speed with which they double the size of their company, or double the size of their average sale, or help them navigate through the biggest deal in the history of the business. Now, I went through that very quickly, but when you listen to that, there's not a chance you don't understand what my company does or what problem my company solves. Three things. Do you have any of these three problems? No, I'm moving on. But it's
Yeah.
very specific. I mean, it really was very specific. I don't sell sales training. I don't sales coaching. I don't, come in and install a CRM. It doesn't say that. It all speaks about outcomes. So anyway, those are the three things that I would say. If you're going to do that right away, those are the three things I would say go do.
Well, the language of the executive sponsor, I think, using your description of your company, I think is so critical, because just as you describe what you do, you're not saying like, oh, we help, mid-size companies increase their revenue and create a more sustainable path of long-term growth. Like that's like, marketing pitch speak. Yeah, or even like the cybersecurity company. Like if you're going in there, like, oh, we have this AI platform that uses machine learning that helps you identify the critical path errors and blah blah blah. Versus like, we're going to make sure that you don't get hacked.
Yeah, right.
Like talk in the way that your sponsors are thinking, not what you want to say from a tech standpoint. And that, I think, gets missed. It gets missed over and over and over. You see it on people's websites. You see it on LinkedIn posts. I see it on emails that I'm getting. I'm sure you get them too, from people that are trying to sell you stuff. And it's just like, man, like I don't even know what this person does, because it's like buzz.
Right.
It's a connection of buzzwords. It's almost like it's like Boggle, where they put a bunch of buzzwords and they shook it up. And they're like, all right, that's my email. I just need enough buzzwords, and maybe one of those buzzwords would be enough for somebody to hit reply. And it's like, no, like, oh, if I'm a company and I'm like, hey, I want to double my contract size and, do that in half the time. Like, that's what I'm thinking. Like, I want to get bigger contracts and I want to do it faster. That's what I want. Cool. Well, that's what we do.
What we do. That's right.
Yeah, I love that. Well, look, man, we didn't even get to a bunch of other stuff that I was hoping to get to. You've got a book that came out just this past year, which is How to Sell in Place, Closing Deals in the New Normal, which is all about how do you convert these kinds of deals in an environment that we're in now, which a lot of people thought, okay, COVID, lockdown, this is going to be a temporary thing, and then we'll get back to normal. And there's not, right? I think we've all realized like the face-to-face selling is going to be constricted forever. It's not that we'll never go back to it, but it's going to be diminished significantly. And so your book is all about how do you carry out this double your double and close bigger deals and do so in the new marketplace. Did I capture the sort of the essence of the book that you published last year?
Absolutely. That's a real challenge to most of us who have developed reduced fear and developed relationships and met buyers tables by going and seeing our prospects directly. And a lot of people are saying, I don't know how to do it a different way.
Yeah.
I can't just sound smarter. I need to, there's got to be a mechanism or a method. And so that's what we put together for exactly that reason.
Is there a way for somebody to get a copy of the book from your website, or what's the best place for people to go?
Best place is to go to Amazon. And I think that you can get it from Amazon. It's possible at this point that it's actually free PDF, so that you can get from Amazon. And then if you go to YouTube, you'll see us on Hunt Big Sales. We put out content about twice a week. And I always feel odd because I want to say that, those things, hey, if you like the content here, hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe, but everybody does. Everybody says that. It doesn't matter what it is. And so I guess I'll say that right now. As a matter of fact, if you don't like the content, subscribe.
No, it's funny because we got a new dishwasher this week and we had to disconnect the old one. And my wife and I are both on our phone looking at videos like, how the hell do we do this? And, it's some home improvement guy. And the first thing is like, I'm going to show you how to disconnect your dishwasher. In the meantime, make sure you like and subscribe. And I'm like, it's like every video on YouTube. You're absolutely right. I don't do it on my videos and I know I should. And I'll also say like on your LinkedIn page, you've also are publishing really nice 3-minute tips and videos. Like we talked about this idea of a friendly buyer versus a fierce advocate. There's some other really great videos on topics like buying tempo. We talked about when to bring in the big guns a little bit today, like a team sell. Right. We talked about when to do it and when not to do it. So these, I love these little 3-minute snippets. You've got these bullet points right in the video. It's just like really concise. And I'm like, okay, I love that tip. So I would definitely recommend checking out Tom's profile too. So, well, look, man, it's been a hoot having you on. I'm really glad we could sit down and jam on sales and make this happen. So maybe I have to do a part 2 sometime soon because we didn't get to.
I'd love to. It'd be fun. Yeah. Thanks so much for the chance to be on the show or on the podcast.
Absolutely. Yeah,
we'll do it again.
All right, Tom. Thanks so much, man. Have a good afternoon. We'll talk soon.
All right, you too.
Yeah. Hey, folks, that's a wrap. Thanks so much for listening to the Startup Selling Show, Talking Sales with Scott Sambucci. I think that's a pretty good place to call today, huh? We're at the end of the podcast. So 2 things I'd love for you to do. Number 1, leave a review on SoundCloud or Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to this show. Those reviews are what helps other people just like you find the show and helps those podcast platforms suggest our show to other people. So please do that to help us get more exposure into these podcast platforms so more people will listen to the show. And secondly, tell a friend or 10. Shoot them a text, shoot them an email, say, hey, listen to this podcast, been listening for a while. I'm a subscriber to the Startup Selling Show. You should check it out. One of the ways that I find podcasts is through people that recommend them to me. And it turns out that's still the best way for podcast listenership to grow is through that viral coefficient. So I'd love for you to help me out and help us out. We're seeing the numbers continue to go up every month, every episode. And that's thanks to you sharing this with your friends and letting people know all the good stuff that we're pumping out every single week here on the Startup Selling Show. So that's a wrap for now. We'll do it again soon. And thanks for listening. This is Scott Sambucci signing off.